Uh, yeah, thanks, Safi, for recording. Uh, Recently, I have been just serving Paytm as a Senior Vice President of Engineering. And other topic that I love to talk about is scalability and operations, like managing the large scale production systems, like imagine Amazon or Paytm, right? So there are like millions of users coming every day. So Agile Scrum is just my passion. For the context, for folks who didn't join us last time and they're joining for the first time, we had the first introductory session about on this topic, introduction to Scrum, 2 weeks ago. And so if you are very new to Agile or Scrum, I would encourage you to go through that. And I think the recording would be available on YouTube. Uh, there we talked about Agile is more like a philosophy which describes how the high level things, and it's a thought process. It has values, it has principles. Scrum is a methodology where we talk about the how to get things done. There are various other ways of doing Agile, like Kanban is there, XP is there, and sometimes people just create their own version based on mixing things. So it's very flexible. And then we also talked about that it is not that Scrum is the only right way of doing things. If things are better worked by Kanban, we will use Kanban. If things better work by using uh, a waterfall model, we will do that. So all of that detail we covered. We talked about what are the Scrum roles and responsibilities. Today we are talking about adopting Scrum, and this will be a very, very practical, I would say, practice-oriented thing. In when I do this session kind of in person in a room, then there is no slide deck. It is just like doing it very practical, maybe on an Excel sheet, or if people are using Jira, then we're using Jira. Today, I will not be using any specific management tool like Jira or Asana or anything. It is just to make sure that we are clear in terms of basics. And then you can adapt the tool and get going with that. Some of the decorums of, or this kind of the things we followed last in the last session. First of all, thank you very much for joining. I know Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, brunch time, a lot of interesting thing to do. So I really appreciate that you guys are here and listening to this Scrum Series podcast. Then second thing is, I request your full attention on this, because if you are distracted, if you are trying to do multiple things at the same time, then it will not be very useful for you, and then it will not come across as something valuable. So I encourage you to have focus. If you have a pen and paper, that's even better. If you like to take notes on maybe a notebook or something, or maybe other personal device, I highly encourage you taking notes, because when you're taking notes, it ensures your full attention. You don't have to really write down everything that is there on the slide, because slides can be shared. These are the ones which I have made, so it is okay. The third point is Q&A. Feel free to use the chat box to post your question. I'll be monitoring the chat box, and we will be taking from there. In the end, we will have more time. I will try to wrap this up by 12, and then to have enough time, like 30 minutes or so for Q&A. Last time also we had very interesting Q&A towards the end. In terms of expectation setting, I also want to make sure that we are clear on the agenda part. We will be talking about like how we adopt Scrum practically, like not just the theory of it. Like how do we plan things? How do we track things? How do we do the change management? How do we do the stakeholder management? Stakeholder management, the last point, is basically about reporting. How do we report out so that team knows what they're doing, the stakeholders know what they're doing? I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to that part today, because we have enough content for 1 hour. So we might have to cover that as a part of that advanced topic when we cover that. I will see. But because the goal is to have a discussion and really go to the bottom of why we do certain things, rather than my goal is not to run through the slide deck. That is really not the intent or my goal. That's never my goal. So make it more interactive, ask questions, use your chat box, and towards the end we will have a Q&A as well. A recap, we talked about Scrum roles in the last session. So I'm not going to go into that. We talked about there's a Scrum Master, there's a team, there are stakeholders, and there's a product owner. Those 4 roles are there. We will be referring to those. I wouldn't be going to the details of that, assuming if people are familiar with that part. Ceremonies, we talked about that we have a backlog grooming, a backlog management part. That's one. Then you have a sprint planning session. Then you have a daily stand-up that happens. Then you have a sprint retrospective. We will see all of that in action today, but how these roles and ceremonies interact. So if you don't know enough about these 2 topics, don't worry, that we will be covering that in the practical aspects. This was the slide where we ended last time, where we said there is a product backlog, which is stories from the users, right? That this is what the users want to do X, users want to do Y. And then we said we take some of these stories and then we break them into tasks and we create a sprint. A sprint is a time boxed duration, with maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This is up to the team. And they will break that stories into tasks. That becomes your sprint backlog. These are the things that will happen for the next, let's say, 2 weeks, right? And team will then run this thing every week. Like every day they will meet and discuss progress on that. And that is basically the time box duration of a sprint. And at the end of the sprint, maybe there is a potentially shippable product. You have made features and you make it complete. And that's how it was described in the last session. I'm not sure like how many of you remember this picture, but just by looking at this picture, there are a lot of questions that come to my mind. And that is where this session comes in, where we talk about the practical aspect, like how do we do the backlog management? What is required to take that stories and break it into tasks? Like, how do we do that? Is there a guiding principle for doing that? How do we do the daily stand-up? How do we track progress in a daily stand-up? How do we keep the stakeholders informed? What if something changes? Like, what if there is a new work that comes up, right? What if there's a production issue that we have to handle? A lot of questions come up. And so this picture by itself, in theory, it looks beautiful. You have a backlog, you take from the backlog, you create a sprint, you run for the sprint, at the end of the sprint, you have a potentially shippable product. But practically speaking, a lot of questions, like where to start, how to maintain the backlog, and so on, right? These are the questions I'm sure you would have in your mind. So feel free to use the chat box to put up your questions if you have additional questions about that this chat session should be covering. But before we go ahead, let's just do a quick poll on the chat box itself. What you have to do is, if you are currently using some version of Agile Scrum in at your work, then write yes. Or if you are not using any form of Agile Scrum, write no. If you are a student, you can also write no, so that I know what is the background of people who are on the call. So let's just quickly, maybe in 1 minute or so. Yeah, thank you for the responses. So it looks like there is a mix, but mostly there are people who are not using Scrum at this point. So I'll keep that in mind so that will kind of just to change the pace accordingly. And I will not assume that people already know the basics. And although we have covered that in the last session, I'll be making sure that we are getting the message across. And people who are using Scrum, feel free to pitch in. Like it is not something that it's a one-way flow. A lot of these things are very practical. So you might want to share your own experience. I see like Naheed is here, like he's using Scrum. Somebody who prefers to be like, I think the Xiaomi, that said no. Shad Jamal is here. Welcome, Shad. And so you might want to just pitch in with your own comments, thoughts. Ali Asghar is here, so you are welcome to like add your perspective when we are discussing things, and use the chat box for that. Okay, so let's start. First thing we said, there is a product owner who owns something called a product backlog, right? What they do is, so where to start, right? The first thing we will do is we will identify a product owner. A product owner is somebody who is mostly like a product manager, somebody who is who's in touch with the stakeholders, in touch with the customers, and they know what the customers and the stakeholders want, right? So we will appoint somebody as a product owner. That product owner will create a list of things to be done. And these list of things to be done will be customer backwards. Like they will put what are the things that the customers need. So, and then very frequently, I would say once a week, maybe even more than once a week, when if required, they will discuss that list of things to be done with the team that is working on it, all the engineers, people, QA engineers, DevOps engineers, TechOps engineers, everybody who's working on that product, right? The second thing to get started is we need a team. So we identify the product owner. We will identify a team. So team, typically, I would say anything more than 8 to 10 people is very difficult. So if you have very large teams, you might want to break it up into smaller teams. So that, and then you divide your product backlog accordingly. But the product owner is the decision maker for the priority and why something is like what the team should be working on. What they will do is they will meet every week or even more than that to prioritize, go through the list of things, make corrections, and they will have, that is what we call as a groom backlog, right? And we'll see is in a practical session that how it will be. So this is my product backlog. Let's say if we were in a room, I would say we would have identified product owner, and the product owner comes up with something like this. It is basically the product is an online shopping site, right? So just to make it more interesting, think like you are trying to make something like Amazon. You already have a website running, and people are able to go buy and just buy stuff from there. And the product owner says that the most important thing for me is P0, send confirmation email, and successful order. There's a lot of things that have been added here. And you saw some of them P0, some P0, and then there's a P1 here. So this is the backlog. But is this a backlog from a Scrum perspective? Product owner says, yes, this is the things that I want you people to do. Like it has a list of things to be done, and he's describing maybe in a more detail, like when you have a title of a user story, you have people who you basically have a detail like what needs to be done. Send, for example, this item, send reminders for items left in cart. Somebody is going shopping and they have added items to the cart. And if they are logged in, then you might want to send them a reminder. Or if they are on an app, you might want to send them a reminder on that app, right? So that's what the product owner wants you to do. So those details are available. Writing a good user story is an art that we will not cover today, but at this point, when the product owner shares this list, there's a lot of confusion that happens. And the most confused person on the earth at this point is considered to be this gentleman from US of A. So that's how the product team, the dev team reacts when they see this product, when they see this list. Can anyone tell what are the issues with this list? Like looks like a good list of product features to be worked upon. Can anyone chime in, please? That what are the issues in calling this as a product backlog, and how do we don't get identified when and totally confused when product owner presents this as a product backlog to us? Any thoughts?
I think time estimation, I would prefer to have it before the priority itself is like the way we come to priority is also dependent on how much effort. I mean, I'm talking about effort impact scenario. So probably
that's correct. That's first of all here the priority is like buckets, right? P0, P1. It doesn't really say why something is more important, right? Which goals it is tied to. What business value it will add. Is this really reflecting the view or the will of the customer or the will of the stakeholders? None of that is clear from this list, and the effort is not clear. So this is not a product backlog. At best, it's a wish list of things that a product owner has come up with. So we are not saying that they don't know how to do their job, but there is a lot to learn when it comes to Scrum. So product owner, along with the team, they collaborate, and Scrum is not about finger pointing at taking faults with people. They work together and they agree on something, that there is a prerequisite for backlog grooming. And there are preparation that is done by product owner before we can make a product backlog, right? A list of features bucketized into P0, P1, that is not a backlog. First thing is we know who our stakeholders are. If the product owner is not able to identify the stakeholders, team will always be confused. So first job for the product owner is to agree on who are the stakeholders, what is their role, right? And the second thing is the product owner needs to do is just get clarity on the business goals, priorities which are clear. For example, when they work with the stakeholders might come up with a very high level things that maybe the CEO of the company is saying, see, or if you are talking about like a larger company like Amazon, then the VP of the particular organization, they say, I want order count, number of orders that are getting placed, and the GMV, the gross merchandise value that is being sold, I want that to go up by 30%. And the second thing, another stakeholder who is maybe the head of the customer support for that, our imaginary online shopping site, is he said, my support cost is going up every time a customer places an order. I have to spend so much on support that I want to reduce that support cost. And if you just go increase your order count, our support cost will skyrocket. So the second stakeholder says, I want this cost to be reduced by 20%. Third one, maybe the CTO of the company says, my operational cost, the amount that we are paying for AWS or maybe Azure or Google Cloud is going up. I want that to come down by 15%. Otherwise, our team will not be like positive, cash positive, right? The product owner has taken all these inputs now, and he or she will work with the team to translate these very high level business goals and objectives into the product backlog. So what they will do is they will map each story to the business goal. They will create some way to impact estimation, that this story, if we do it, how much impact it will have. And the impact will be aligned to the business goal. If product owner is not able to do that, then probably they should find another job. Because if the product owner is all that they have is a group, like a set of ideas, a wish list of things to be done, and they're not able to map it to the business goals, you probably need a different product owner, or the product owner should change and align to this thinking. The third item that the product owner does is stack ranking, not P0, P1 bucketization, but absolute stack ranking, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is reviewed with the business stakeholders. And let's say the stakeholders are your CEO, your maybe chief operating officer, maybe the CTO of the company. All these people agree that what you have as a roadmap is a good, they agree that if you do these things, it will have an impact on the business goals. Okay. Now, let's look at the V2 of this. So the product owner, let's say product owner has come up with an idea. I see Shad's hand is, do you have a question there? Please go ahead.
Yes. So I just wanted to clarify for myself and for everyone else. So here, when we are saying stakeholders, are these always external stakeholders? And are these stakeholders always higher up in the hierarchy? Or there could be scenarios where we might have different kinds of a stakeholder?
True. We talked about that briefly in the last session, that stakeholders can be internal or external. And it can be even maybe like if you are, for example, working for making a very platformish thing, which is just used by other teams in the organization, right? So your stakeholders will be maybe your peers, like maybe some other product leader will be your stakeholder. So stakeholder is not necessarily CXOs of the company. It is just basically whoever is sponsoring your team that says, yeah, this team should exist because they will do this work, whatever work that is there. And if you don't have any stakeholders, then that team shouldn't exist. And it can be even customers that are stakeholders, like customer bodies, some of the large customers, they will be your stakeholders. So there is a question about from Farooq about, is Agile and Scrum different? Agile, as we said, is more like a thought process. It's a philosophy. It describes things like what are your values and how things are. And I just encourage you to maybe just do a search on this, or like refer to the previous session. And Scrum is a way to implement Agile philosophy. And it's more like, it's more detailed, it's more prescriptive. And that's when we are talking about these roles and ceremonies, we are talking about Scrum. The core of it is just being agile. So if you can be doing Scrum without being agile, and we talked about that last time, that you can be doing a lot of ceremonies which are coming from Scrum, but you might not be agile. So here, coming back to this product backlog, now our product owner has done a wonderful job. They have they have taken that list that they have, that the customer should be able to do quick the single click order, and there will be a detailed write-up of this, that as a customer, when they are looking at the product, they should be able to just order that with a single click, like without requiring to go through the cart and the checkout process. And that's basically how you write a user story, which we will not go into today. That we will cover in the next session. Product owners are smart. They are able to like look at based on some customer research or how other sites are doing it. They kind of come up with an impact that if we do this, we will increase our daily orders by 6% or monthly orders by 6%. And that is in line with the goal that I was given, right? Similarly, the product owner has gone and added, okay, this one will support, will reduce the cost for support. That if the user has to retry the payment. Currently, they cannot retry the payment. If it fails, they have to restart the checkout. But if they just do a retry on the payment, then it will reduce the support. Support cost will be reduced because people will not be calling customer support that I just tried to place an order and it failed, right? And you can see there is an item about cost reduction. These items in the yellow, they have been added. They were earlier not there. That cost reduction by 10% because they want all their EC2 hosts to be replaced by something in Graviton. This is very AWS lingo. So, but just basically the team came up with an idea that, okay, if we do this, we will reduce the cost by 10%, which is in line with the goal that was given. Anything which has a very clear business impact, they are being stack ranked higher. So 1, 2, 3, and you can see in this case, it's it's something which is like, we are not sure how much it will increase, that if we send reminders to the customers. And the product owner says priority is 3. Look at the last column. The tech team has given some estimate that it's a very small item. And so they don't argue about this thing and they just leave it there. The second issue that you see here is that some of these items are still prioritized at 4 and 4, and maybe we should still want to fix it. There are certain items here which are not prioritized, and they're just been like, because the details are not known. I mean, that is a TBD. We don't know the size of it. So we are on the path to making a good backlog, but we are still not there yet. Like, can you give me a release estimate that by when this feature will go live, by looking at small, medium, large? And we are all used to small, medium, large, right? That we can say this is yes, there is a request, and that's very correct, that anybody who's not presenting, please go on mute. And I think everybody is on mute. Okay, so continuing this thing, there is still some work to be done, and you can see it's a very iterative process. And don't worry about the specific items. I mean, the goal is not to really go in detail about what a backlog for a online shopping site will look like. The key takeaway is now the product owner is fully aligned to the goals that was given to the team. One of these goals or some items will actually end up supporting multiple, and product owner has done a good job by mapping all of this. Tech team has given some estimates, like this is effort size, medium, large, small. This is something that is very common. But there is a problem. The problem is that you cannot determine how much time it will take. And that is where I will introduce you to this concept of story point estimation. One side of the traditional way of doing things is you take something and then you break down into the full details of that. And then you say, you basically, that's called a work W breakdown structure, WBS. And nothing to do with BS, by the way. It is work breakdown. And you take each and every item and then you sum that up and say, yeah, this thing will take 6 weeks. This item will take 12 weeks. This item will take 3 weeks. And that doesn't work, because for that to happen, you will have to kind of go into the details of each and everything, do a detailed breakup of that, and then try to come up with an estimation. And some of these items which are large or extra large, it's very difficult to do a detailed breakup without spending tremendous amount of time. So what we do in the Scrum world, we have this idea of story points. What is a story point? A story point is a relative estimation, just like medium, large, small. And we are aware of that. We know small is smallest part, and maybe there is a medium which is bigger than a small, but smaller than large, and so on, right? In story points, we come up with a number, and that number typically people use something like which has increasing distance, like 1, 2, 3, 5, and when you go from 5 to 8, that's like 3-point difference. 8 to 13, it's a 5-point difference. 13 to 21, that's a 8-point difference here. So anything which has increasing difference between, it's not linear scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why is that? Because your measure of complexity, story point that we assign to a story, is a measure of complexity and unknowns, not just the effort. So if you have, so there are 3 axes: effort, there is complexity, and there is unknowns. Based on that, team come up with and say, my easiest item will be 1 point. Anything which is bigger than that will be 2 point, and 3. And after that 3, we will not go 4, we will 5. Typically, people use Fibonacci series. You can use your own series, and we'll quickly describe how this thing works. But just remember, the story point is not the number of days or number of hours that it will take. It is an imaginary number that the team comes up with and says, I think this particular story should be given X number of points. And one team's estimate might be totally different from some other team's estimate. So it is not portable. Some teams might say, my easiest thing is, like, let's say you have a code and you want to add some logging at certain places in the code. That's easiest change that any developer will agree. That's the easiest change. There is no risk in doing that most of the time, like unless you add like a very, very verbose message and which fills up your disk, that's a different thing. But typically adding a logging message is the easiest change. I'm taking that as an example. That the team says is my one. And then you build up on that, and then you take that. So the team will take a story. The dev team will ask questions, and this image is, I should have added the credits here. I copied it from Quora, so this is not my own image. The customer, basically the product owner, reads the story. The team will ask the question to clarify that, okay, do you want me to send emails to the customers, or do you just want to push notification, or how after you want this to go immediately, or after 15 minutes, or after 30 minutes? Product owner will respond with those answers if they are not already documented. And after that, the team will estimate. People in the team will say, I think it's very easy thing, it's a 1-pointer. Somebody will say, no, I think it is a 5-pointer. And they do it in a way that they don't tell each other. They just write it down and then they share so that they don't influence. But in the end, everybody in the team, or maybe few people in the team, they will come up. People can abstain from voting on that, but they come up with that. I think this is a 5-point, or somebody says, I think it's a 4-pointer. And what these numbers are, it's just a number of complexity. That's one is the simplest, and then the guy who's doing it is 4. He says, no, I don't think it's very simple. It is more complex than that, but it is not very difficult. So I don't think it is 5 or 8. It is 5. It's 4. and somebody else says, nah, I think it is 5. And then they discuss among themselves and say, why do you think it is 1? Typically, the discussion is between the lowest and the highest. And after that, the team will agree on something. Or if they don't agree, then we take the kind of the mean of the ones which is like if you have 6 people and they're still not agreeing, we will go to the median point, not the average, but the median point. And if the team is still like if there's a large divergence, which means there is a total lack of understanding about this particular story, we will we will take that and we will discuss it again. So let's just do a quick exercise that if I ask you to, these are the things that you have in front, like vehicles, and we can relate to this because, and let's say the size of this vehicle. This is not about the complexity. This is mostly about the size. So if I say motorcycle is 1, and then you have been given other tasks, right? So you will say, yes, Celerio is bigger than motorcycle, but it is still like smaller than an I-20 or a Seltos, right? So you can give it a number. You can say, I think I will give Celerio a 3 because it is bigger than motorcycle. It's quite bigger than motorcycle. And then based on that, you will come up with a number for Hyundai, and then you will come up with a number for Seltos, and then you have a Volvo bus. You will probably end up having a much bigger number for that. So when we are doing this like in a room, this is much more fun. We make small groups and they come up with these numbers. The key takeaway with this is these numbers by itself don't really tell anything at this point. They are just a team's way of denoting that complexity and the unknowns. Like for example, Volvo bus, we don't even know like how many how many feet that is long. So you can say it's a lot of unknown there, and it is definitely much bigger than a Celerio. So you will give it a very large number, and Celerio will get a smaller number, like closer to a motorcycle, and Hyundai will be bigger than that. And different people will have different numbers than when they do that. And then you can discuss that why this thing is, why do you think like Celerio and Hyundai i20 are having that huge difference? Somebody had said I-20 is 5, somebody had said Celerio is a 5, and then you will discuss that why that is the reason. The key thing is we put a number on that so that we can look at the relative complexity and size and the unknowns and come up with that. So the team says, if I want to do this, this is the total point that I am associating. Again, points are not effort estimate. They are effort plus complexity plus unknowns. So then teams can work towards reducing the points. And then we will talk about that when we go to the sprint planning. So with that discussion, any questions before we go into the next set of things?
Yes, I have one question.
Yeah.
Should we also consider dependency on other teams?
Correct.
While
So here at this point, I am assuming, just to keep it simple, and thanks for that question. This is a very good question. I should have covered that. We are assuming that this is a single point, point with a team which has no dependency, which is typically not the true. So when we do the third session, which is the advanced Scrum, that is where we come to talk about dependencies, and if you have to work in multi Scrum teams, and how do you create these group of teams, and how do they work together to solve the dependencies? To keep things simple, at this point, the assumption is the team has no other dependency other than within themselves, just to keep things simple. But your question is valid. When we do this sprint grooming, we look at the dependencies and we take that into account. But just to keep things simple, I'm assuming that there are no dependencies. Team is self-sufficient at this point.
Got it.
So what we did was, yes, please.
Yeah, one more question, if I'm allowed. Yeah. So
sure.
This effort size, effort size when we're talking about, where we mentioned that product owner will probably come with large, small, more on the effort bucketization, right? So that I want to clarify for myself, should that come from the product owners, or should it come in consultation with tech team? My
question.
assumption is like product owner have at least this much sense that they know, at least at the bucketization level. Of course, when we go to the story points, probably tech team will get involved. Can you clarify
Yeah.
this for me?
Yes. So I think the question is, should the product owner take an initial stab at the sizing? And they do that. And if the product owner knows, yeah, this is like maybe small or this is medium. So at that point, that is good, right? But a small, medium, large wouldn't give you any terms of sense of key when like what it will take to deliver. So the tech team earlier, like when we used to do waterfall, they will go in full details of each and every item, and they will detail it out and get the total number of days required to ship that. And so what Scrum did was it find a middle ground. And so they say we will come up with the concept of point. A point is just like a relative measure, but it is not like a absolute measure of effort, but it is just a relative measure between things. So that the team went here, and I will give an example. So product manager initially had marked as small, and then the team agreed and said, yeah, looks like it's not a one, it's not like the most simplest thing, but I want to send a reminder. So they said it's a priority. It said effort point is 2. And then they went and added effort estimate. So this estimate comes from the team. And if possible, we should involve all of the team in doing that. Go by each and every item, and the team gives an effort estimate. They discuss that why this is 8 or 5 or 13. And the reason why we chose that that increasing distance between the items, so that anything which is becoming, because complexity increases. If you look at it into a graph, then the bigger the item size is, the more unknowns it will have. And that is why we choose the costing, which is the story pointing, not the costing, the story point, which is it will always have a increasing order. So the short answer to your question, PM's product owner can do the effort bucketization in terms of small, medium, large, but the story point should come from the tech team, because they know what are the technicalities involved in getting these done. And most of the time, when the team is doing the effort point estimate, the product owner is there to answer questions about the scope and the functionality and dependencies, of course, when we are talking about like multi-team things. And team comes up with this. So now we have a beautiful backlog. Everything has been prioritized. Product owner was able to kind of remove the deadlock between certain things, because they were not able to. They still have some items which are the support cost reduction, increase orders. They don't have a percentage on it. And so the team doesn't know what the impact will be, but they agree that, yeah, it will have sizable impact. So they have left it there. And up to this point, the red line is what the team is confident about. And they have given like effort estimates. Everything else, they have marked 100, which means we have not touched it. That's one way for the teams to say. Because at any given point of time, if you start doing each and everything, if you try to give a story point for all of your backlog, that will become a humongous task, particularly for things which are very vague, or for which maybe the impact is not clear. You might spend effort on things which might just be dropped from the product backlog anyway. And at this point, based on our maybe experience, we will say, yeah, I think we have enough items to take up for the next sprint. So you will stop at this level. And we want to come up with a story point effort and the priority for as many items in the sprint as we want. But then, the law of diminishing returns, and after some point, like as doing prioritization, doing the impact analysis will be effort for the product owner, and doing the effort points will be tax for the tech team. So they decide collaboratively that we will stop at this point, and then they will continue this. The cycle will continue. So in the next iteration, they will take up few next items, and they will clarify these priorities. They will add more effort points. But at this point, we are ready to start our sprint, because we have enough stories. Top of the backlog is sorted, and it is the team thinks that, yeah, we can take that up. How they decide that? Because they will know from their previous sprints how many points they were delivering in the previous sprints. that is a concept that is called velocity. That if I say, yeah, maybe in the first sprint, I delivered these 3-4 items, and the next one I delivered these. You sum up all the stories that were delivered in the last 3 sprints, 5 sprints, and then you try to find the maybe median of that or average of that, and you will know what is your velocity, how much you can deliver in a given sprint. So the team looks at it and say, yeah, I think we have enough to deliver for the next 2 sprints. So we can go into the sprint planning. And they will meet again next week and clarify the other items that are there in the list. But now compare this list with the list that we had started with, which had this a list of items to be done, and then some small, medium, large that was based on the product owner's understanding. There was no clarity on what will the impact it will have. And everybody was just identified, and they didn't know what to answer. They didn't know even what questions to ask. And compared to this one, where team is confident that if I do these things, I will have an impact, and I will be moving towards the goal that has been set for my team, right? By the stakeholders, by the customers. So this red line is basically, it will next week, it will move, more items will get covered, and that's how we will continue to see that continue to make progress. But at this point, because the sprint is going to start, the team will move to sprint planning. Okay. There are certain comments based on story points. How can we assume the number of hours will be taken for each story? You don't. You don't do that at the time of sprint, like when you're doing sprint backlog grooming. Backlog grooming. You do that the hours estimate. You'll do that as a part of the sprint planning. We'll come to that. We need to track the hours spent only at the sprint level, not at when we're talking about the backlog and when the backlog is presented to the stakeholders. And this is something that we will cover in terms of the stakeholder management. How will we denote? How will we present this thing, this roadmap, to say, okay, I would think this will be done in first 2 weeks. This will be done in the next 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks we will be done with these. And in 6 weeks, we have a 6 weeks roadmaps right now, and we will continue to expand this. But you don't look at the hours spent at this point. You will look at the points, you will look at your velocity from the previous sprints. If you don't have velocity, then you will say, yeah, let's wait for maybe at least 2 sprints to know what is our velocity. So that's a trap that we get into, that early on when we are looking at the backlog, we tend to do the effort estimate in terms of time. In Scrum, we don't do that. Again, this is my take on it. This is a very practical session. If you feel that you will be successful trying to do a effort estimate in terms of hours or days, you can try that definitely. This is not like a religion where things are sometimes very hard coded and can't be changed. Okay. So we have already spent like 45 minutes into this, and so let's just do a quick checkpoint. Are we agile? We had said there are 12 principles of Agile. I had taken like 5 of them. That the team is doing customer backward prioritization. Yes, we are, right? Because we just did a prioritization based on customers and stakeholders' asks. They are empowered to be self-organizing. I would say no, maybe we haven't covered that part yet. So I think we will park that. They collaborate with full transparency. Yes, they are very transparent about what are they going to work on. And the team they are going to deliver in smaller chunks. They will deliver it more often. Yes, we are ready to do that, because we are taking stories and we are delivering that in every 2 weeks. If the team has agreed on a 2-week sprint, they are going to do that. And they will retrospect, learn, and improve. These are the 5 like the qualities, I would say. If you have that, then you are agile. So 3 of them we have covered with our first exercise, with our first, I would say, activity, which is in Scrum, which is the backlog grooming. We are making good progress. There's a question from Shivansh, why story points approach better than giving effort directly in terms of hours? I think, Shivansh, we talked about that, because it is very difficult to go break every story into its work breakdown like 3 months in advance and give an estimate. Those estimates, particularly for the large items, are mostly inaccurate. So that is why we don't do that. When we go to the sprint planning, then as we are going now, we will cover that. So now at least We have a smiley face here with that we understand how the product backlog is going to work. There's still a lot of questions. So we will go and cover that. After you have a backlog, we will start doing the sprint planning, right? First of all, team commits to how many stories we can do. That's the answer that the product owner wants. And based on, as I said, based on the past velocity, team will say, yeah, we have been doing X number of points every sprint. So this sprint looks like we can take these 5 stories, and that becomes the goal for the sprint. Then what the team will go do is they will take just those 5 stories and they will break into tasks. So now the hour estimates or the day estimate will come in, and because at some point you will have to form the dependencies between the task, and you have to project manage, and you have to allocate people to it. So who does it is basically everybody together: product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. The team is pretty much the owner of the sprint planning. The Scrum Master plays a big role in facilitating that. And for the task breakup part, product owner is not an active participant, but they are welcome to listen in. And how often do we do that? Is we do it before every sprint. That's a mandatory thing, that we can't start a sprint before having this sprint planning session, or some people call it sprint grooming. But just keep in mind, backlog grooming is different than a sprint. Some people mix that and they try to do it together, and that causes a lot of confusion. And if your backlog grooming is not ahead by 2 sprints, then that typically I have seen becomes a problem, because that means that you are just doing too many things like trying to solve too many things at the same point. You should have your backlog grooming done at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks in advance, so that the team knows what they have to work on. We will take from our backlog, we will build a sprint plan. But before that, little bit more theory. So what is the prerequisite for a sprint planning? I think the first one is clear. Backlog. We have a groomed backlog, which means there are enough items at the top of the stack that can be taken up. And they have agreed upon intake and delivery criteria. This is something that is defined by the team. What will be the intake criteria? That, okay, I will start working on a story. For example, the team says, if there is a UX requirement, user interface, then there are Figmas given or wireframes are given. If there are emails being sent, like if there is a customer communication involved, the templates for those are known. If there are cross-team dependencies, then those dependencies are known, the alignment with those teams are present. This is something, again, which is defined by the team together, product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. And they say, these are my intake criteria. Every team should have that flexibility that they define their intake criteria and a delivery criteria. That for this thing to be deployed in production, what is required? The team might say that the product owner must define a series of test cases, like use cases that they will do, that they want to be working, and those become like your default test cases. You can have another exit criteria, or the delivery criteria is it must meet certain, like in terms of memory usage, or in terms of CPU usage, that it shouldn't exceed that in production. Those are the things that is defined by the team. Scrum wouldn't define that, but it is defined by the team. So we are empowering the team to make that criteria, that if these things are met, a story will be taken in and a story will be delivered. The third thing that the team must know as a prerequisite is the total scope of work. We just talked about the product backlog, but all of you know, if you are in engineering, that the team works on product backlog. They also work on production issues. They have to work on support tickets. For example, if there are customer reported problems coming in, not a production issue as such, but somebody is saying, I tried to buy this item, I made a payment, and I haven't got the item delivered yet. And the support team is not able to figure out what happened to that order. That will come to the tech team. So this is something that the tech team has to work on. There's another thing, it's a tech debt that is called. For example, you are using a very old version of Java and then you have to upgrade it. That's a tech debt. So there are a lot of such things. Anything that the team will work on. So look at your own context and come up with a total scope of work. You will need to take these into account for a successful sprint planning. If you completely just rely on product backlog to do your sprint planning, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for failure, because you have to look at, and those agreements are done as a part of what we call as a bandwidth allocation, that how much bandwidth will go into each of these buckets product backlog, how much bandwidth we will pick, how production issues, how much bandwidth we will put there, tech debt, how much bandwidth. So the teams come up with that. Typically what I had seen, I have been doing 80% goes to the product backlog, 10% to the production issues, support tickets, 10% to the tech debt. And is that the golden rule? No, that's what my team agreed upon, right? This is when I used to run like a Scrum teams. I still encourage every team that is working to come up with their own. So within me, for example, if there are 15 Scrum teams, then they will have their own things about how much they will be taking. Because some teams, it is also sometimes point in time, right? It is very point in time about maybe they need to handle a lot of production issues now. So they might allocate more bandwidth versus a team which is not facing so much production issues. So the team bandwidth allocation depends. This agreement is required between the tech team, product owner, Scrum Master, and the tech team will also do a prioritization of the tech debt backlog, like just we do for the product backlog, except that maybe the impact is not always tied to a business goal. Like, for example, if you have to upgrade your Java systems, if you have to do security patches, those are driven by certain other like a company-wide goals in terms of security, reliability, and those things. But you will have a tech debt. Tech team will do a prioritization of that, and they will be ready. For the lack of time, I'm not going to the details of how the tech debt backlog will look like. It is very similar, list of items, stack ranked, and it has a story point allocated to it. So that's the back preparation that the team will do before they can do the sprint planning. Now let's quickly talk about the bandwidth allocation. What we have is, don't feel like scared by this big sheet. It's very easy to create this in an Excel sheet. Reason I'm not using like tool like a Jira or Asana, because again, it's better to know the concepts rather than the tools. These are the dates. These are my 10 days for the sprint. This is my team. So that is why I said if you have more than 8 to 10 people in a team, it becomes a little bit clumsy. And because the number of interactions in the team increases and it becomes difficult. Everybody in the team has added that, okay, and that's maybe something that they have agreed upon, 8 hours working day, remove like meetings and stand-ups and this and that, and the chit chat. Everybody will be actually working 6 hours. And now this is coming down to hours. So it is no longer about points. Some of the Scrum practitioners will not like this idea, but that is something which is very practical, because now you have to manage a 2-week window. So we are going to the details. Every team member adds how much time. Like this guy, Amrit Singh, is maybe on the 14th July, he's on vacation. This guy, Miraj Alam, is on vacation on 16th July. And that is all. This guy, Joseph Xavier, maybe this guy is a very senior dev, and like half of his time he's just helping others or working on things which are like not in the sprint. Maybe he's like a senior principal engineer and they are working on something else in parallel. So they are this guy, Josie Matthew, maybe it's very new. So that is why they need time to ramp up, and they just put their number of hours that has been agreed upon. We take that. Then we said that the team will also taking care of the production issues. So we said, yeah, maybe 1.5 people we will allocate. And this time, and the teams maintain their roster of rotating between people. So this time it is the turn of Devesh Sinha and Miraj Alam to be the on-call. Some people call it DRI, but their job is to be available when there's a production issue. Why this is important? Because we don't want the whole team to be pulled in when there's a production issue happens, and this Devesh and Miraj will help. With the on-call issues, with the support tickets, and maybe there are people who are doing some other like mentoring activities and support activities for the team. They will put their times here. Other overheads, maybe Savita Sharma is also helping the some other activities in the team which are not listed. But at the end of the day, we come up with how much time is available for sprint. And this is just for the next sprint. Every sprint, we will create this sheet, which will tell us how many hours are available from each individual. Based on this, you see that total for a sprint was 484, but available for a sprint is 362. I will make Farooq to mute. So now you have your capacity. We have 362 hours. We had talked about points when we had to communicate outside. We are talking about hours when we are planning for the sprint. It's a 2-week window, which is a time boxed window. So it is not very difficult to plan for 2 weeks compared to planning for 6 months. Now you can see, you can even figure out what is the overhead. 362, 484. You can very easily find the percentage, how much of the time is going in activities which are not then active product development. And this is a good thing for the stakeholder communication, right? First thing we did, everybody put their hours of availability into a sheet. Based on that, and the team had agreed upon certain rules, they came up with this number of hours, 362, and everybody, Devesh Sinha, not ready to take any work in this sprint. Biraj will take some, Amrit and all these people will take some work. Vishnu Patel, good guy, like 60 hours. He's not taking any vacation. And this is a good tool for even for managers to look at, and maybe they can find out that who has not been taking any vacations and ask them, why are you not taking any vacations, right? Or if somebody's taking too many vacations, then they check in. So these tools, again, Scrum doesn't describe it. It's a part of the practical work for this. We did this capacity planning. Now we will take the first item from the sheet. And we said PBL 10. That was our first story, if you remember, that the customer should be able to quick single click order. And it will be written in a format which is called the user story format. The team had said it's a 13 point, and the team allocated like the capacity for this in hours, because we did the previous sheet in hours, so we will keep the same thing. And we said it is 84 hours. How we do that, we will see that in a while. We basically break that down, and then we came up with, for this story to be done, it is the total number of things that we have is 84 hours. So how much time it is taking? 23% of the total available time is going into this single story. And we continue. And the team will basically take each story, break it into sub items, and do a hours wise estimation, and they just keep adding. And essentially, you see that this bucket is getting filled. That is why sprint planning is also called the filling the bucket exercise. Now they have filled 90% of their available capacity. But if you just like sum them up, and you can say yet to be allocated, 36 hours is yet to be allocated, which is 10% of the available bandwidth. And at that point, because the team, let's say, had agreed that 10% they will give to tech dead items. So now we will stop taking from the product backlog. We will take it from the tech backlog. And tech dead backlog is there just like a product backlog. And the first item there was, let's say, TD21, which is the tech debt item. That is a security fix for upgrading the Java version. And it got added, and it had a point estimate. People allocated that into hours. Now, when we are doing it for a sprint, you are doing it for a 2-week window. And it is much easier to have that done as to have the hourly estimate for that, hour-wise estimate breakup, compared to like a very large projects. Like this one here, I don't like it. Replace EC2 host by Graviton. It is a 21 points, and the team estimated that to be 120 hours. So this one will definitely require a more detailed breakup to make sure that the team is covering all the corners and not missing anything, right? And otherwise, it is always better to break such very large or extra large stories into sub stories and do it like that. So this is something maybe that's a learning from this planning exercise, that this is too big. We should have broken that into multiple stories and added them, so that we get used to the habit of delivering in smaller chunks. So is this picture clear so far? We started with the allocated capacity, available capacity. We kept the time for production support, all other like non-product development work. We agreed upon 90%, 80%, or sorry, 90% of available bandwidth will go into product backlog, 10% to the tech debt, because that's what the team agreed upon. And we filled up the bucket. The bucket is filled to the brim, 1% remaining. We don't go into the nitty-gritties of that. Sometimes it can be slightly higher, slightly lower, and that is okay. But the goal at this point is for the team is to go finish all these stories. We will prefer, and none of these gets spilled over. So that's why we are not taking stories which are running into multiple sprints. If any story is running into multiple sprint, we will break that into smaller chunks. Okay, so our sprint plan is ready at this point. The question remains, how did we do the allocation, like the capacity planning or the estimate in hours? Let's just see that. This is my first item. And again, if we are doing it in a room, it's much more fun. But here, kind of the end result is being shown. All of this is being done in Excel. So this was first story, quick single click order. Story point was 13. Forget about this left of this thing right now. The team will start looking into, okay, how much UI change is required? And the Mehraj says, I will do that. And he estimates it to be 24 hours. The order service, the backend change. And if you are from the tech background, you will understand that to implement something like a single click order, a very natural breakup of things will happen. We are not going into too much detail. Like, for example, order service backend change. Suraj Singh says, I will take 48 hours, which is like, that's a number of days. If you look at it, it's 8 days. But that detail will be available. But just for this task breakdown, we are not going. Typically, I prefer task breakdown to be at a daily level so that every day when we meet, we are able to see what progress is being done. And team just added them up and they added these 3 and say, yeah, this is the total estimate for this story. For the next one, 18 hours of estimate. For the next one, 6. And after that, it's a 30. The last point that I would like to talk here, because I'm kind of running out of time, is when they discuss this item, Savita Sharma said, they allow users to retry payment. Like, we estimated this to be 8. A lot more complexity came out, which was not known at the time of sprint, at the time of backlog grooming. So what the team will do is they will mark this task and this story to be a spike story. A spike story means that we don't know enough about this thing, or there are a lot of unknowns. So what we will do is we will spend time doing a more detailed design of this thing, so that, or maybe doing a prototype or some POC. That thing is called a spike story, where the goal is to clarify things. And that's a very, very useful tool. I encourage you to read about a spike story. Just do it like just ask ChatGPT or do a Google search on this, and you'll see what's a spike story. The spike stories are used specifically when the team finds out that there is a user story which has too many unknowns or too many complexities. They will take that spike and they will say, in this sprint, we will just do deep dive to figure out what are the unknowns and how do we address them. And then in the next sprint, we will add another part, which will be actual user story. So they will actually add a user story, which will be a spike story, and then they will do the actual work in the next sprint, maybe. Right. So at this point, this is how do we come to the task breakdown of that. So from point is for the backlog grooming. For the sprint planning, it is only for the yeah. I see. Ijaz, do you have any question? Okay, looks like not. So we will continue. So is this clear that we use the story points for the backlog estimation? We use the estimate in hours for the sprint planning. And that's a key difference, because when you're talking about sprint 2-week window, you have to figure out what the dependencies will be, right? Because some work maybe from the backend service will be required by the UI change for the integration to happen. Some testing has to be done. So there is a little bit of, a flow and the dependencies come into picture. And if there are cross-team dependencies, they will come into picture. So that is why we go into hourly or daily estimates, so that we can work out those dependencies. The last point, because people are, maybe somebody is not available certain day, and so on. So you will basically build a 2-week project plan, and you can use any of your favorite tools to do that. But the goal is to make sure that, first of all, the devs or our engineering team is not double booked, that, so like Mehraj Alam got booked for this and that, like both activities together, or somebody got underutilized, that we did the sprint planning and then we didn't realize that somebody didn't actually get points. With this approach, you will be able to see that every member in the team is getting work to their capacity. Okay. So clear so far that we have completed the sprint planning for us. And of course, there are a lot more stories in this sprint. So this activity about breaking things down into this continues, and we keep track of how much work, like for example, if you sum up all the things for Suraj saying, you will know how much effort Suraj is spending, and that should not increase, exceed Suraj's available capacity or whatever he has committed for this sprint. Okay. If there are questions, feel free to ask in the chat room. Otherwise, I will continue here. Let's just do a quick checkpoint. Are we agile? We did customer backward prioritization, which is very good. We picked up the first few items which are top. So we are definitely customer backwards and we are doing prioritized. Is the team empowered to be self-organizing? Yes, they are, because they had defined how much work they will do on the product backlog, how much they will do on the production support, how much they will do on the tech bandwidth. And they are also empowered by that they are deciding who will work on which story. And so they are self-organizing. It's not that the stakeholders are dictating who should be working on what. They collaborate with full transparency. They are very clear, very transparent. These are all the things that we have to do for the next 2 weeks. These are the X number of things that we will work on the product backlog, on the tech backlog, on the production support. So they are very transparent. So definitely we are green check on that part. They are delivering small chunks more often. So that is one definitely. We have seen the team is committing now to deliver in this smaller chunks, and they will deliver more often. Retrospect, that will come later. But so far, team will use the learnings from the previous sprint plannings, and they will apply that learning into the next sprint planning. So in a way, we are already adopting that as a part of, these are the agile principles. I just picked some of them so that we can have like a quick discussion on these. But the goal of Scrum as a methodology is to make sure that we stay agile. If you're not doing things, for example, you're not empowering the team, or you as a manager, for example, are not empowering the team, you are not giving them flexibility, or the team is not empowered and they don't share the information clearly, then you might be using some flavor of Scrum, but you will not be agile. Okay. So far we have covered this. So we can like change the question mark into smiley. We understand how the sprint backlog will work. We created from the story, we created the task that are going to be delivered. But we haven't started the sprint yet, and that's what we will do now. So the key thing about the sprint execution or tracking is a daily stand-up. There is no other status meeting that happens in the Scrum framework for status reporting. So, and this is something that is very clear. This daily stand-up is not something that is done for the manager to know the status. They can join the stand-up to know, but the stand-up is for the team and by the team. And the team basically just works on, are we on track for delivering for the items that we had taken for this sprint? We just, every day the team meets, face-to-face conversation. And if we are doing remote, then everybody basically comes, joins the meeting, turn on the camera, and we discuss that. Again, this is a very key part of being collaborative and being honest in what we do. There's no information hiding, so that somebody is working on something else and then they are not informing their team about, or somebody is like stuck. They're not. Mostly Scrum Master and the team Scrum Master facilitate this, the daily stand-up, and the team provides the update. The product owner is observer. Product owners will just listen in, but we don't encourage asking too many questions in the Scrum by the product owner or any other stakeholders, right? And so that we can time box it. Because if you spend too much time, if you have a like 8 people team, 15 to 20 minutes should be more than enough. Because everyone just talks about, what did I do yesterday? What will I do today? Or do I need help? These 3 questions, nothing else. If somebody needs help, we just do a follow-up. We say, okay, person X, go help person Y, and that's it. Focus for this stand-up is completing the sprint goals. It is not really to go into the design details or why some things are not working, or it is by the team for the team. It is not a status meeting for the managers. That everybody, and this is something that I feel very, I think this is important, because I have seen people provide a status update to their manager. They will look at their manager and then say, okay, I was working on this and I was working on that, and say, no, provide the status to the team. Manager is here to listen in, because if they want to know, they will join in. But it is for the team, and the focus is on completing the sprint. And for that, to bring that focus, that how much work we had committed and where we are. We use what is called as a Scrum board or a sprint board, which is a very useful tool. If you're using Jira, Jira will create it for you. I have been doing sprint since Jira was not very popular, so we used to actually do it on a whiteboard. And this is what it looks like. You will have a story. Let's say story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? This is my story. These are the goal. And we had taken all the items, which are basically all the tasks for that. And some of those tasks are in not started, some are in progress, some are done. And every day we will move tasks as from progress to a done state, right? And how many lanes should we have here? These columns are called lane, like not started, in progress, blocked, code review. I prefer just these three, not started, in progress, blocked, but I have seen people put it in code review as well. And done is when something is completely done, it is ready to be deployed to production. So again, teams have their own, some will add a column for like deployed as well. That's fine. That's up to the team. But the idea is that the team should be able to see that which of the stories are at risk. At this point, 3, 4, and 5, like not even started. And the team will basically get together. Maybe the resources which are going to work on a story 3 are first working on a story 1. So that's why this is not started. But if something is blocked, it will be put here, and it will be the job of the product owner and the Scrum Master to make sure that they are unblocked. So this is your sprint board. Highly discouraged to make a sprint board like this, that you have a person and all the tasks that that person is doing that. And the other way can be a person and the story. This is even worse because one person is working on multiple stories. We don't know what exactly, which task they are working on. So this is, in my opinion, not the right way of doing this sprint. I had actually, let's forget about it. If you go back to our sprint backlog, it will basically be this list and its task with the that's what we will track every day. The team will meet and say, okay, each person working on these stories, whatever is in progress, will provide update, and things will be moved to in progress, things will be moved to done, code review, or blocked state. That is basically what the focus of the sprint board is. The main purpose of the sprint board is to bring the attention to which stories are not going to be complete, and the team will then work together to make sure that this is taken care of. Okay, are we good so far? Okay, it's very important to keep this in mind that a sprint, and these again Google pictures, I didn't create them. We don't like one-person shows, that one person is working on a complete story. We prefer more like one-person shows, like you can see this person is doing everything. We prefer this, like in Scrum, that there are multiple people working on a story to complete it faster rather than one person working on the story. And this is one common mistake which I've seen many times, that one story will be picked up by one developer and they will do everything in that story. And particularly in the teams which are full stack, this happens most. Don't do that. Add more people to the story to finish it, unless the story itself is like a 2-pointer, which is like you don't need more people there. But if there are things which are like happening in 6 days, try to see if we can put 3 people on it and they can finish it faster. That way your risk also minimizes, because if that person fell sick, then there are others who can make progress, and so on. So this is important picture to keep in mind. The last point that we will talk about here is a sprint burn down. That if you start with this is the ideal. Like every day people will make progress, and if you keep tracking that how much progress is done, because the task will be marked as completed, and whatever is completed is basically showing is remaining work, will continue to do that. It will fall down, and then you will see this was a 3-week sprint. So if you have a 2-week sprint, it will only have like 14 days or 10 days here. Or some of the items will remain incomplete at the sprint, and this is what we call as the sprint spillover. We don't want any spillover, but again, reality is that there will be spillover, whatever we plan, because things never go as per the plan perfectly. If they go, that's very good. The team should be congratulated for that. But whatever remains will go to the next sprint. And by definition, whatever spills over from the previous sprint goes as the highest priority for the next sprint planning. So sprint change management, the group today has been very silent. I haven't seen many questions. Am I going too fast? And or is it like the right pace? Because as I said earlier, the goal is not to finish the slide deck. I don't think I'll be able to finish this anyway, but we'll stop here. And I would encourage people to ask questions in the chat box, and I will continue talking about the slide, but we can always like break away from the slide and just discuss the questions. So the first thing that is sprint change management that happens, again, very practical items, not theory. Estimations might go wrong. Something is taking longer or shorter, right? Some task finished faster because it was maybe underestimated or overestimated. Things like that will happen. So team will have to, every day they will discuss and say, so there is no golden rule for any of these things. And scope might change, that new requirements might get added, or new story is getting prioritized mid-sprint. Something which was in flight was deprioritized or delayed because maybe you had a dependency on some external factor that didn't complete. So your story which you had started is going deprioritized now. Typically, what we will say is we will take up some new item, or the team can decide that no, we will finish whatever gets deprioritized. We will use those resources to finish the work earlier on the other stories. For new story deprioritization mid-sprint, I have seen teams which will not take the new story. We will consider that we already packed to the brim, so we will not take mid-sprint. We will deliver everything. Some teams are more flexible. They will drop something they will drop one story and they will take another. They will take a replacement. I don't encourage that. I personally feel that stories should not be prioritized mid-sprint. And if it is something that is inevitable, then the product owner should really answer that why this can't wait for like 2 weeks, because it's just a matter of 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we will have. And sometimes you will have additional fewer resources possible. For all of these situations, the main thing is that the team should come up with their response when they discuss it every day. It is not for anybody, like a stakeholder or maybe Scrum Master or product owner, to decide what should be done. And it will vary from situation to situation, team to team. It is better to always keep the stakeholder informed about any change that is happening, but team should be empowered to make that decision. So a lot of changes, these are just like maybe a tip of the iceberg. A lot of changes happen, and teams can agree to have maybe a rule that we will not do X, or teams can say, no, we are open-ended and we will take things as they come in. We will discuss and we will make a decision. So that's a sprint change management. That's basically very easy. It is again empowering the team and not enforcing. If you are a manager of a team and you are forcing a lot of changes in the sprint while the team is not agreeing, you can do that because yes, of course you are the manager, but just be sure that don't call yourself as agile. Like at that point, you have stopped being agile. You are just doing sprint Scrum activities without being agile. So just keep that in mind. Empower your team to make these sprint change management decisions, whether they want to have a rule for this or they want to discuss this and decide on a case-by-case basis. Now we have third, the sprint is complete. That I think we will stop here because of the lack of time. And in the next session, we will talk about two things, the sprint retrospective and the stakeholder management. Retrospective is also part of the stakeholder management. This 4 or 5 topics that we have, we will cover in the next session. And there is a question here. So I think we have covered 1, 2, 3, 4. We have converted the question marks into smileys. The last part is now remaining. Okay. Okay, so there's a question here. How do we control the budget if change is continuous? Since Agile welcomes changes, too many changes could be a loss to project. So I found a very good question. If the goal is to very tightly control the budget, and even if it means poor customer experience, then definitely Agile is not for that team. But if the goal is to wisely control the budget while being customer backwards and ship things which are useful to the customer, because as we said, after this sprint, team will go back to their sprint plan, their backlog grooming, and they might take new things, and they might push out things. So budget, as in like how much time you have, how many resources you have, that will change. And if your organization is not really into that, and they want very clear deadline, they want very clear budgetary constraints, even if it means like shipping suboptimal product to customer, don't use Agile. I mean, they don't use Scrum. There are other ways to achieve that. Here, we take pride in being customer backwards. We take pride in being collaborative, and that means that if the customer or the stakeholders change their mind, or if they have newer data which says, yeah, instead of doing X, maybe we should do Y. So we welcome that. If it is happening too many times or too much change, like every sprint, I have seen some stakeholders will change their view of what the goal is or what the targets are. That is, I think the product owner should have that discussion with the stakeholders. That is not healthy. That shouldn't be encouraged. So Irfan, did I answer your question about the budget? Good. What is the next question here? How can we get this recording session? I think, yeah, so this will be, I think Saif Bhai is here, so Saif we will upload this to YouTube, and we will get it from there. Okay. So what are the key takeaways? Yes, Shad, please go ahead.
Yeah, so sometimes we see that, especially when we convert story points into number of hours, there are certain unease at times, right? Between Scrum, the person who is saying that this will take this much, some other people will feel, okay, this might take little less, and all that, right? How do we preempt as well as if there are any well-defined techniques that can be used to help team in this scenario?
Right. So that's a very good question. And I think that shows kind of the experience that you have with the Agile, because this is very true that the moment you start putting for the sprint, you start putting the hours, which means that we will know that how many hours was put on this particular story. The natural tendency is to start converting points to hours. That, okay, you take all your stories for the last 3 sprints and see how many points were there, how many hours was a sprint. So we should have some relationship between sprint points to hours. And I think we should just kind of have the discipline not to do that. Because as I said, points are a measure of complexity, and as a reflection of understanding that the team had when the work started. And all those 2 stories might be put at the same story points, but their efforts might still vary. So let's not, I think we shouldn't do that. That said, I think that eases out some of the concerns that the team has about story points to hours conversion. The second thing that is there, that if we should be very clear that we will not use, if somebody is taking longer to finish a task, we will not use it against them. But instead of that, we will help them. That somebody had said this task will take like 4 hours, and they end up taking 12 hours, right? So because we are meeting every day, we will try to make sure that they are still able to finish that in time. So I think a lot of anxiety comes in when people feel, oh, what if my manager knows that I estimated this to be 4 hours and I ended up doing in 12, or the other way, that I estimated in 12 and I finished it in 4 hours. That is the collective mindset, the growth mindset. That is what it comes into play there. That if somebody is overestimating, underestimating, we just help them get better at their estimations. We don't hold them really accountable for that, unless somebody is doing it as basically by gaming the system. That's a different thing. But in general, people are honest, and we will use that to just, and whoever wants to learn and get better, we will help them. So first of all, we don't do points to hours conversion. We do use the overall capacity for the sprint to see that, okay, in the future, if we increase the capacity or decrease the capacity, maybe what will be the trend line for our, and I think that is clearly defined in one of the slides that I have about how do we do the future projections about how many points we will be able to deliver. But in general, I discourage the teams from doing a points to hour conversion. That is not helpful. Second point, we will not hold people accountable for their, like if they occasionally, if they go under or over, but instead of that, we will help them. We will help them get better at their estimation. And the third point is that the team culture should be should stay collaborative. The moment you start going micromanaging that part, it starts to show up, and people start like being very conservative in their estimates. That they would rather like they start over estimating so that they don't because they say if I overestimate and then I deliver it faster, everybody will be happy. I think that tendency should be stopped as well. That is not good for the team. So people who are overestimating, or some people will have a tendency that they will always take up more than they can chew. Some of this data that you will get from the sprints will help. And because it's a self-managing team, the team should be able to point that out, and they should help each other. But in general, keep the points and the stories, story points and the effort estimate for the sprint different. Don't use it. Don't use the effort hours for any planning activity, for a backlog planning activity. Is that clear?
Yes, yes. I have one more question.
Sure.
So with respect to, we also discussed that we should have the impact also mentioned by product owners.
Yeah.
And the impact should be something like this, not just like it will increase the order, but it will increase the order by X, right?
Yeah.
Now, when I think from product owner point of view, right, that's very hard to come by because nobody really knows, right? Like how much this will impact. Will it really translate into X%, X plus 1%, or 2X%, right? And that's the reason we do a lot of A/B testing. Even a small change can lead to big impacts. So how does it help to prefer to come up with exact number? Is it more for the clarity of the product owner themselves rather than on the alignment? Because even if it is like it will impact is increase in order, maybe from the team alignment point of view, that may be sufficient enough. What's your take on this?
Yeah. Right. So I think if there is a big bet item, for example, a very large activity like the story, and for that, if we are not sure about the impact, then definitely we need some ways to put an estimate on that, right? And there are ways to do that by maybe doing a smaller version of that first, or maybe doing by more market research, because we don't want to spend like 5-6 weeks working on something and then we don't even know what will be the impact of this, right? So the fail fast, I think that is the term used, that if we want to have, if we have a very big, large item, we will start in a way that we can find out if this will have an impact or not, like by building a minimal version of that, or by just doing market research. There are ways that product owners do that. If it is a small item and its impact is not known, but the gut feel says that yes, it will have an impact, go with it. I mean, the amount of time it will take to debate and discuss. So instead of that, just do it and see if it is making an impact. So it's like spending 5 rupees on something versus 5,000 on something, right? You wouldn't debate so much on 5, but maybe you will debate on 5,000 because or even bigger if it's a 5 lakh, right? So as the effort grows, you should be clear on the impact, that this is what the impact. Sometimes product owners say, I don't know, but I'm ready to bet on it. And I will say this will impact like 5% or 6% of this particular goal. And that's good too, because product owners who take risks are more successful. Because if they wait for all the data to be available to make the right estimate, I mean, that will be forever. That will never be true. And what we do after that is basically once we have released something, we make sure that we are measuring that what is the actual impact from this particular change. So it's a balance that you have to find. You can't go with, okay, I will go with without having any estimate. I will just trust my product owner, or you will say, no, I don't trust my product owner at all, and I will always need very accurate estimates. It is somewhere in between, and that is part of self-organizing teams, and also being very transparent. Product owners have to be transparent and say, we don't know exactly, or this is a guesstimate, or this is something that because X happened, I think this now Y will happen. So they will come with that, but don't wait for the perfect estimates. It will never come. The perfect estimates will be there only when something is released, and particularly for B2C product, it's very difficult. So find a middle like path in between, from having like no estimates no impact estimate at all, to having very, very accurate estimates. So find a middle path, I would say. So Rendra is asking, someplace Epic is being used instead of story. What is the best practice? Epic is basically just a collection of stories. So, and I know Jira has like a little bit of this weirdity, but in general, at least in the Scrum world, Epic is a collection of stories. Stories are broken down into tasks. So in Jira, it is a little bit difficult, particularly I think the Jira that is used in some places like what is called the enterprise version, that is Epic. You can have Epic or a story, and then you have to break that. So don't use Epic in Jira. I think that's what some people suggest. I'm not a very expert in Jira, but if you have a story, you just use label to group them together, and then call that as Epic. What it means is related things should be clubbed together, and that forms an Epic. Epics usually make stakeholder communication easier, because they want to see when a bunch of things coming together will be delivered, right? So it will always be a story broken into tasks. You can club those stories into an Epic, and I think specifically, like when we look into a specific tool that will come up, but the structure is Epic, story, task, and sometimes the subtask. Jira doesn't follow this structure. That's why there's a lot of confusion on that.
Maybe I can share something which we do with
please go ahead. I think you will have a lot more experience in terms of the Epic part of it, right?
Yeah, I can share a few. I don't know what's right, but I'll share what we follow and what works for us. So usually higher level goals, for example, if say the goal is that we need to increase the order by 4% by end of this quarter, right? So that could be a potential candidate for an Epic. And then from that Epic, the product manager can figure out a few stories that will help contribute to that Epic, so that it's easier for anyone to have a look at the Epic and see what are the different initiatives that has been taken to achieve this higher level goal.
Very true. Sometimes it is, I have seen SK also, a story level estimation of the impact becomes difficult, but Epic level it is easier. And sometimes it's the other way around. So I think the teams, they can be flexible in that. Okay, like if you have like 5 initiatives under an Epic, 5 stories under an Epic, then collectively product managers are able to say that if you do all 5, then maybe this will be the impact. But individually they are not able to. So that should be okay. And Epics generally like map more to what stakeholders think. Like if we say that I'm making one things about that, I will allow people to manage a wish list. So the wish list may become an Epic. Within wish list, there might be like 10 stories about how to create a wish list, how to put up products into a wish list, and so on. So, but generally, I just see it as a story clubbed together into an Epic. Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks for your participation in this. Special thanks, Prashad, for helping with some of these questions as well. I shared the feedback form. Please fill in. And apologies for not being able to complete the last part, which was the stakeholder management, which I had sense of that. I had mentioned it in the start itself. that we might not be able to get to the stakeholder management part. So we'll cover that in the next session, where we will talk about the like how do we do stakeholder management, for example, how do we inform them about the roadmap, what is getting done when, how do we inform them about the resource utilization into the team, how do we tell about do we need more resources, less resources, and so on. So that is all part of the stakeholder management. And how do we take their inputs about the backlog itself. So all of that is part of the stakeholder management. I will go back here. Some discussions that are remaining as a part of the stakeholder management. Sprint demo and retrospective, that's the only activity as the sprint. The Scrum activity that we didn't cover today. Others are overall, I think we covered. These topics will be covered in the next session. Next session, we'll also be talking about the large scale Scrum or multiple team Scrum and so on. Like this, what we call a scalable version of Scrum. How do we manage that? And more discussions about how do we manage the on-call or the DRI part of it. So some of those topics we will cover. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
what is alternate of Agile methodology? Oh, there's a lot. Like Agile methodology as such, Agile, if you don't want to be Agile, you can go for waterfall. If you within Agile, there is Kanban, there's a Scrum, there's XP. There are multiple things within Agile, and then you can create your own. I mean, Agile as a high level will define thoughts, but you can create your own methodology within Agile. How can we get recording? I think this covered we had. Share the video links. Yes, there's a WhatsApp group that is there. That I don't have a link for that WhatsApp group here, but yeah, we usually share. I'll post that WhatsApp group on the LinkedIn as well, so that we are clear. Okay. We'll share the video link there, and also MFIRD, which organizes this thing, is a non-profit organization. They basically help the professionals get better at that. So if you have not joined the WhatsApp groups, I encourage you to join. And if you are good at certain things that you feel that you can contribute, feel free to step up and take up these like similar sessions. I don't consider myself to be, for example, is expert at this, but I'm still like talking to you so that we can help each other. Good. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure talking to you. And please fill in the feedback form as well. I will post the link again for this if anybody missed it. Thank you. I'll exit out now because we are out of time anyway. And if you have questions, feel free to join the WhatsApp group and we can discuss there.
Thank you. Have a good day ahead, everyone.